Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined once again by Kevin Graham to discuss our second victory in a week. Kevin, what was your thoughts on the second half? You weren't overly enthused at half time.
Better second half. This is one of these games. If we weren't in a run, the type of run that we're in at this precise moment in time, we would look at that as a post-European game and we'd be quite happy with the performance because it was completely controlled, and in the second half we lifted it, got our 2 goals we deserved, probably should have scored more. But the run that we're in, we're still going to look on the negative side. We're still going to look that we were a bit passive in the first half. But the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half really won the game. As soon as we scored, there was no way we were going to lose that game. There was no way we were going to even draw that game. I was a bit harsh on Moy at half time. I thought he had a good second half. Quite glad that he didn't actually come off. I thought his work rate was great. Pleased for Big Duffy. He won everything in the air all day. He got his goals. Probably should have got another one as well. Absolutely ecstatic for David Turnbull again. Another great 70-odd minutes for the young laddie. Sorrow is just a wee buzz bomb in the middle of that park. He just runs about mopping up, appearing here and everywhere, tenacious in the tackle. It was a decent second half. Not a perfect second half, a really, really decent second half. And one, as I say, if we were in a normal period, or what has been a normal period over the last 4 years, we'd be leaving the stadium tonight going, that was a decent performance after a European game.
A fairly comprehensive victory in the end. I mean, at half time we were talking about all the positives as well as some negatives, and we looked at the performances of Taylor, Elyounoussi, Frimpong and of course Edouard, and we spoke about potential changes that could have been made at half time. We didn't expect them to be made because that's not really what Lenny does, but he did wait right up until, you mentioned Turnbull there. Turnbull was brought off in the 80th minute. It was 67 minutes before any changes were made, and Edouard and Frimpong were 2 of the boys that were taken off, by which time, of course, we had opened the scoring. And like you say, I mean, I don't know if I heard Darren O'Day saying that the last thing that Duffy needs is a win bonus. Did he actually say that?
I didn't hear that myself. But
or a goal scoring bonus, something like that.
Well, maybe a goal scoring bonus, but all the players need a win bonus. We all need a win bonus.
I know. I was going back to that tweet where he was saying that Celtic pay all of his wages and we barely won a game since then, but it may have been tongue in cheek. But anyway, we're looking at the substitutions. I thought we used the substitutions really well. Interestingly enough though, Kev, no sign of Griffiths or Ajeti when Edouard came off. Is Klimala now our second choice striker, or I'll push that even further, looking ahead to the Scottish Cup final, if we do indeed play with one up front, which I'm sure Lenny will, who does he play? Because Edouard was not at the races today.
Edouard was not at the races, but again, if you go to a cup final and don't play Odsonne Edouard and it ends up going pear-shaped, then you're going to get abuse for that.
Well,
you are going to get abuse for that. Edouard's going to start. He is going to start.
By the same token, Kev, you've got 3 players in there who would never have been in anybody's starting lineup a month ago in Hazard, Sorrow and Turnbull, who are replacing the record signing for a goalkeeper at Celtic. They're replacing Scott Brown, who's a captain of the club. So you're looking at that. They're replacing potentially Rogic, who had looked pretty good, or Christie even. So by that kind of, if you're looking at it from form, you're playing the 3 guys on form. How can you play Eddie on form? He was murdered today.
It's a fuzzy logic, ain't it? That's why I'm playing Eddie. But I would play Eddie. If Eddie's fit, he plays.
What about the other 3 I've mentioned? Because that was the question asked, and it's a question on everybody's lips leading up to this game. Will he play Hazard? Will he play Sorrow? And will he play Turnbull? He did, and all 3 of them were the right choices. You've got to... We spoke before the game about the game against Lille being ground zero. It's a dead rubber in terms of what we could get from the Europa League, but we had to start somewhere in terms of the turnaround of this season. We were very cautious after the game, Kevin, about not moving into the hysterical levels of our season is going to be saved. But what we tried to do is pull as many positives from that as we possibly could. And 3 of those positives were the 3 guys I've mentioned. When the team lines came out today, I was delighted that all 3 of them were in there in the starting lineup. I was a wee bit surprised that Laxalt was left out, but obviously, Neil Lennon's maybe looking at Taylor to make sure that Laxalt and Taylor are options should he decide to pick one or the other for the Scottish Cup final. But I do think that it was ground zero. I would be absolutely amazed if we were to start the Scottish Cup final next week with any of those three players missing. Do they make the cut for you?
Yes, they do. For the performance over the last two games, I think they've added an energy and drive to the team. The big goalie seems to have a bit of calming influence at the back. The save that he made today, it was straight at him right enough, but he still had to be alert enough to make it. He seems comfortable with the ball at his feet. He seems commanding. So the goalie starts. You need to have a look. You need to have a look now. We've been going on all this season about the pivot in the middle of the park. The Brown and McGregor pivot hasn't been working. The last two games, while McGregor was poor against Lille the other night, he made a couple of errors. Today he was quietly effective, and the pivot with him and Sorrell has a decent balance, which we haven't seemed to had this season with McGregor and Brown there. So you have a look at them. You also have a look at what David Turnbull was brought to the side as well in the final third. He's brought something different. He's brought an energy. He's brought
a corner kick.
He's brought a corner kick. He's brought a danger from set plays. He's brought just an enthusiasm to actually get forward as well. What was really interesting? What was really interesting today for me is we seem to have we've heard it for weeks and weeks, was we need to get back to basics. We need to get back to basics. How many times did you see the centre halves just putting their foot through the ball today? Quite a lot. If they were in any doubt whatsoever, they just put their laces through the ball and knocked it long for Eddie to chase. And you saw that as well. There was a safety first attitude today, and maybe that's the back to basics that we need. We needed hard graft, and we've got that hard graft. Now, people will say we're Glasgow Celtic, we should be better than hard graft, but you've got to do the hard graft first. What was it, Jockstein famous quote? You've got to work in your overalls before you can put on your best suit. Have I just made that up?
If you have made it up, well done, because it's a very good quote. But I think when you're looking at that performance today, Kevin, we had to really get back to what we did well after 2 wins in 12 games. And I think when you were then analysing what we weren't doing so well, a lot of the real obvious things that were coming out from the Celtic supporters and coming through our bulletin were things that Lenny was dead against. For example, dropping your captain. I mean, yeah, Brown didn't even feature today. He didn't come on. Again, going into the Scottish Cup final, I've asked you the question about Eddie. I don't think it is unthinkable. It's unthinkable at times to drop your captain, but we've done it. And since we've done it, we've won 2 games. Edouard, I had him in my starting lineup. I put my starting lineup out during the week, and he started today because he's our best striker, but he's not playing well. He's really not playing well. And I think that I would be loath to start with Klimala because I don't think he does give you enough. I mean, he came on today, and I don't mean effort because the guy's got effort to burn. Came on today, takes on a throw-in, wins possession, and then he's at the edge of the box when Ayer crosses the ball in. His work rate cannot be denied, Kevin, but he doesn't have the instinct. And I mean, there was an occasion today where El Yunusi opens up, gives it to Taylor, who crosses it right across the face of goal. It comes off a Kilmarnock player, of course, and goes out for a corner. But someone with that instinct puts their toe right through that, and it's a goal. They throw their body at it. I don't think Klimala's got it. So if we're able to drop your captain, as we have done in the last two games, and quite rightly so, you can drop Edouard for the Scottish Cup final because he's not given us enough. There was that occasion in the first half with Duffy playing down the left channel. Edouard, it was a token run. He was never going to, and then he turns around and shouts at Duffy that he wants it through the middle. So I honestly would not say that he's a certainty to start against Hearts.
That's what I mean about the long balls. It was obviously they've spoken about that. They're going to say the two centre halves, Julian and Duffy, are going to shell it. Every so often they're just going to shell it, and the front players have to be ready for that. And it didn't look like Eddie was up for actually doing that shift. Kamala is up for doing that shift, but as you say, there's still faults in his game. And even when he came on, he didn't really do enough when he came on to say, by the way, that's a decision that Neil Lennon's got to make. I don't think it is a decision that Neil Lennon's got to make. His decision is Eddie starts. Because I don't think...
Based on what?
Based on, I don't think Kamala...
Based on his performances previously, because that was murder of the day.
Basically, just based on your point, what he says about Kamala. I don't think he's ready to be a starting striker for Celtic.
But if Celtic are going to be playing these long balls that you've identified, that's not Eddie's game. Eddie won't... That doesn't suit Edouard in the slightest.
It does get him behind the defence. I'm not talking about long balls for him to actually jump in there and kid on his John Hartson. I'm talking about balls in behind.
No. When you're looking at playing players who are on form, getting back to basics, looking at Ryan Christie or Scott Brown and saying you're not playing well and removing them from the team, that's as basic as it can get, and it's worked. I think there was an element of luck on Thursday night. No one expected, I don't think, for all three of those players to start in Hazard, Sorrow and Turnbull. They did, and Lenny done the right thing by keeping them in, but by that logic, you don't play Edouard against Hearts because he was the poorest player on the park today. And not only that, he didn't actually look that interested.
Did he play Frimpong as well then? He didn't look that...
No, I wouldn't. Absolutely not.
That interested.
No, I wouldn't play him because he was also very poor today. So I wouldn't play him. Absolutely not. You've got to play the players. Darren O'Day made the point, and I've made it this week as well. They guys on the bench need to win the jerseys back. Now, if you're playing, you need to make sure that jersey's yours. Did Frimpong do that today? No. Did Edouard do it today? No. No, we're not at a point here where you can get all misty-eyed about what Edouard done last year. He's not playing well enough, you drop him. He's still on the bench, he can still make an impact. The problem I've got is it would appear that Klimala is the second choice at the moment up front. Griffiths hasn't played in two. Yet he's came on fleetingly as a substitute. So I don't think Klimala can lead that line either. So there's a big shout for next Sunday when we play Hearts. But I don't think there's even a question about the other three names that we've mentioned in Hazard, Sorrow and Turnbull. Would you start with A3?
Of course. I don't think there is a question either, but you've also got to have a look at what's Aiete and Griffiths done. They're not even getting a sniff. They haven't had a sniff in the last two games. Aiete played last week against, there was a Ross County game and he hit the inside of the post and he annoyed you because he laughed when he hit the inside of the post. Has he been seen since? After that? No, he hasn't.
He came on as a substitute the other night. Yeah, he did, aye. But the thing is, Kevin, if you're picking a team on merit, Edouard doesn't play after that today, neither does Frimpong. And I don't know if Frimpong had an injury, but you don't play any of the two of them. I'm going to ask you for your Scottish Cup lineup, and obviously we can come back to that later on. But corner kicks, David Turnbull. I mean, I was going to have a look at, on average, how many corners we win. We win a lot of corner kicks, particularly domestically, Kevin. And the Ferencváros Dundee United game, we won 17 corner kicks between the two games, and we created nothing from them. We now have someone who's picking out a player just about every single time. What a difference that makes.
His delivery for the left-hand side, his in-swingers are frightening to try and defend. And our big centre-halves, Julian and Duffy, you saw the amount of chances. Well, I think they had 3 chances today. Julian had 1 in the first half. Duffy had 2 in the second half, scored with 1 as well. I mean, the guys should be loving that. Oh, this is going to go into the box now. Whereas before with Ryan Christie, we were lucky if the ball got into the box. And even the one that we had when we played the short corner with Callum McGregor, and McGregor flashed it across the face of the goal. And that kind of annoys me as well. It annoys me as well that all our players seem to be coached to go to the front post. There's nobody at the back post. There's never anybody at the back post. They all seem to be in that area at the near post, and they're obviously told to go to the front post.
Talking about back posts, just came to my mind talking about the back post. I asked you in the first half about Taylor's penalty shout, Kev. What about Eddie's in the second half with the handball at the back post?
I probably agree with Darren O'Day. If VAR's in play up here, that's a penalty. Is it a penalty? No, it's not in my book, but by the letter of the law, it's a penalty kick.
Because, I'm not going to get ground down unless it's a horrific refereeing performances, of which I'm sure, I have no doubt there will be a few between now and the end of the season. But I'm now looking at the goal difference. I'm looking at ensuring that we certainly don't lose any more in terms of points, game on game, Kev. And we said that before we came in. Obviously, Dundee United scored against Rangers today. It's 2-1. And we've clawed one goal back today, but we've certainly not lost any in terms of goals or points. And that's going to be like that game to game now domestically, because we are in a fight to try and claw this back. So yeah, absolutely, the corners, it's a hidden weapon that bizarrely enough we've not been utilising all season long, and one of the recipients from those corners is going to be undoubtedly Shane Duffy, who claimed the first goal, got the second, and could have had a third. Now, last Thursday and today, we've seen a different Shane Duffy. We've seen someone who's far more composed. I still think he's cumbersome at times, but could we craft, and this goes back to Gary McDowell's point as well, could we craft a partnership between Duffy and Julian yet, with Ajer playing down the right, because Ajer had another good game at right back today?
One of the problems that we've had this season, Paul, and it's been said plenty of times, is we've never crafted any sort of partnership. We've never had any cohesion. So we've got to go for that. You've got to have a look at Ajer's had 2 good games at right back. Right, you're a right back for the foreseeable. Duffy and Julian are our 2 centre halves. You can't go changing it. And you've got to have a look at the left back situation as well. I don't think Greg Taylor had a bad game. He never had a great game, but he didn't have a bad game. But you need to get a settled back 5, and that's what you're looking at. It's a settled back 5 that you've got to go. These guys have got to get used to playing again, playing with each other. And today, there's a big lad up front for Kilmarnock there, and Duffy and Julian handled them extremely well. And we all know what we've already seen this season. And in previous seasons, especially with Julian, sometimes he doesn't like a big physical challenge, but he was fine today, so was Duffy. They didn't do anything wrong, but you've got to get partnerships and you've got to get cohesion. So you've got to keep the two as a partnership.
No, absolutely. Now, just before we go any further, big shout out to one of our new viewers in James Kennedy. Just started watching over the last few days, Kev, so he's welcome. And remember, everyone, if you are watching on YouTube, keep subscribing, because we are putting out daily content. And if you're happy with the daily content because it's free and you want to chuck a couple of pounds into the pot, then it will all go to charity. And there is a link underneath the video that will take you to our charity fundraiser, which we are calling the Quadruple Treble Charity Weekend, because it is still a quadruple treble that's on, Kev, next weekend. And just to let everybody know that we got a few brilliant donations during that game. Barry Flaherty threw in £100 and Gary Miller £20, Murphy 1888 £20. We're now sitting at £5,100 on the charity front, which is superb. Thanks everybody for getting involved in that as well. So Duffy, you think we're going to get a player out of him yet? We were talking not that long ago about sending him back to Brighton in January.
Look, the whole team's went through a complete and utter, as I says on Thursday night, there's been a perfect storm. There's been poor form, players struggling, not poor recruitment, but what looked like poor recruitment. Players struggle to settle, and there's been poor coaching and poor game management, and that's the 3 things that we need to sort. And if the team starts building in confidence, then you would hope that these players would find form. Duffy is not a bad player. He has his limitations, and he's just like the rest of the team. He just went down a wormhole with us over the last 6-7 weeks, and we've got to hope that the confidence just starts creeping back.
Yeah,
all we were looking for today was a decent enough performance to take us to a cup final next week. And we got that. I think we got that. After a European game, I think we got a decent enough performance where the manager has got some big questions to answer for next Sunday.
Well, sometimes, Kevin, it's a good headache for a manager to have. We're talking about, does Edouard start? That in itself is bizarre, because Edouard is a class player. He's not shown it. And that today was a very poor performance, not only by his standards, but when you're bringing on someone like Klamala and even Griffiths, when they come on, they'll run all day for you. That's not enough as a Celtic striker. You need something different. And I think Griffiths certainly has that. I'm not convinced Klamala does. Yet he started off his Celtic career with a bit of a bang. His first half a dozen games, it looked as though, he's the real deal. unfortunately, he's gone off the boil, and I wouldn't expect him to see him anywhere near a starting berth. Then you're looking at Griffiths, Kev, and it's quite clear that he's pretty much out the picture at the moment. He was being used as an impact sub, scored 3 goals from the bench. Now he's just a sub. Klamala is the guy that Lennon is going to when Edouard's coming off. As I said the other night, he literally ran his socks off because he had to get his socks replaced. And then Edouard, we know what he's got, but he's not showing it. So, listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I fully expect Lennon to play him. But by the method and the logic that we're using to continue to play the Hazard, Sorrow and Turnbull, you wouldn't play Frimpong or Edouard. So hopefully we can get a tune out of him on Sunday. Now, let's talk about that clean sheet, Kev.
I know, a clean sheet.
Last time I've had a clean sheet was against Hibs, 3-0, I believe, at Celtic Park.
Wow, that was...
Would that be right?
Start
at
of
home?
September. Start
at
of
home.
September, I would have been like.
Yeah, so, I mean, a big part of that, it goes down to the partnership that is being developed, I would say, between Julian and Duffy, and long may that continue. Ayer's looking brilliant at right back. A few people suggested that quite a few weeks ago, Kevin, and I wasn't sold on the idea, but his last 2 performances have certainly proved me wrong. And then the goalkeeper, I just think he's not doing anything fancy. He just seems to be a commanding presence at the back.
It's quite weird. It's probably because there isn't any pressure on Conor Hazard that he can come in and just play his natural game. I mean, we're in such a bad funk anyway, so him coming in and just being that calming presence and
Did you say funk?
Yes, I did. Yes. Yes, I didn't say what you thought I said.
No, I love the use of the word funk. Well done. I'm glad you got it in there.
So he can come in and be himself. He hasn't had the pressure of Scott Bain or Barkas. I mean, there's guys that have came in that haven't had the pressure of this bad run, and they're able to just come in and play their natural game. And I don't think that can be overlooked. I mean, there's guys coming in there, maybe if you play Brown again, but it's in the back of Brown's mind going, I've been poor the last couple of weeks. I'm struggling here. I'm maybe a yard off the pace.
Yeah.
And with Barkas as well, he's maybe going, I haven't had a decent save yet. I haven't done
partly to blame for the bad run. Yeah.
I haven't done nothing yet to make me feel confident that I'm the number 1 goalkeeper here. I just seem to be keep on losing goals, and there's nothing I can do about it. So there's maybe that pressure. The guys that came in haven't had that pressure of the bad run weighing on their minds. And next week's completely different for them. Though it's a cup final, we go in as massive favourites. Well, maybe no massive favourites. Well, maybe massive favourites when we got there, but. We go in as favourites and there's pressure next week. So it'll be interesting to see if Neil... Look, I'm sitting here and my head's already going. Neil's going to go away. He's tried and trusted.
You think?
I think he's going to go... Pardon me. I think he'll come out with some utter nonsense like the guys that got us there deserve the chance or something like that. He'll come out with that.
Well, football doesn't work like that. We've seen it this season. That sentimentality, that loyalty hasn't been working this season. And I think game by game, you're playing the best team that showed the previous week, if you ask me. And that's why we've went out there today. And that performance was, over the 90 minutes, Kev, was vastly improved on the likes of St Johnstone, Ross County, etc. Now, Gary Reeves makes a good point, and Gary is a very welcome viewer of the Celtic state of mind. And he watches from afar, but normally travels all the way up from London, every other week to watch Celtic, and has done so for many, many years, and in fact, decades. And he's saying that pretty sure Duffy will excel in a confident, winning Celtic side. There was a lot of pressure, of course there was, and I think a lot of the pressure that was on Duffy was put on himself. It meant so much to him, but today he did seem to be fairly confident, Kevin. That's a big thing. I mean, you look at the game, people are saying don't get over hyped about the game against Lille, didn't overreact there. It was only one result, but we had to start somewhere, and it could well be that we are starting a winning run. And then it becomes to me, we'll come back and deal with other issues later. I mean, I know there was a protest today, but the one thing we need to do is we need to salvage what we can from this season, starting off with Sunday quadruple treble. But then, I mean, that league form needs to be maintained. I think there will be the famous, not a breakdown by Rangers by all means, but there will certainly be a few occasions where they drop points where you don't expect them to drop points. And that is going to happen. That happens to everybody throughout a season, because that team and the way that they've played, and I'm taking nothing away from them, they've been excellent this season. But again, we get the confidence up and we go into Ibrox, and it's a different monster altogether, isn't it? There's a few other players that we need to talk about. First one I would say is David Turnbull, Kevin. 2 games in a row, potentially 2 man of the match performances in a row, and then all of a sudden you're looking at McGregor. There was a moment in that game, Turnbull, McGregor and Ayer. There was a move on 77 minutes, ended up with Ayer on the right hand side. The first time ball by McGregor after the ball in from Turnbull was outstanding, and that's the kind of thing. I mean, I know he wasn't at his best on Thursday night, but I'm glad he wasn't dropped. I'm glad he held the captain's armband again today, McGregor, and hopefully he can express himself a wee bit better, because he's been playing within himself all season.
He's got a padlock behind him now in Sorrow. I think he trusts that Sorrow's going to be there. He probably trusts Brown's going to be there as well. But sometimes, you have to go back to that game at Pittodrie, and I don't want to go back to that game at Pittodrie, but you look at the tackle that he made in the box, it was sheer and utter desperation that gave Aberdeen that penalty kick. You look what he did today. He looked comfortable today. He looked like he knew his job. He knew the 2 pivots looked like they knew their job. And McGregor is a class player, and I know some folks say we give him an easy time, but does he not deserve an easy time? really, I mean, he's a cog that makes us tick. I'm just glad that every transfer window that we get through, McGregor doesn't leave. He is really, for me, he is really that important to that Celtic side. And out of everybody that we know that there's players want to leave, I hope Callum McGregor is not one of them, because I think we could handle losing any of them, but I think we would struggle to replace Callum McGregor.
This has been obviously a big part of this season. The comments after the Ferencváros game, it's not going to go away. It will probably be revisited in January, because I do believe that 1 or 2 of the players who have been agitating or looking for a move will get their move. I actually think they will. Encham, he's not even featuring at the moment. I know that it was said that he had an injury on Thursday night. McGregor, I can confirm from a source very close to the club that he certainly wasn't one of the guys agitating for a move, Kev. So, I mean, some of the other ones, everybody can figure it out, but I don't think they'll all go, because we're talking 5 or 6. But McGregor wasn't one of them. And I think that, Encham, could we afford Encham leaving? 100%. We could have afforded him before Turnbull.
Aye.
I know.
We could have afforded them leaving in the summer.
I know.
And we spoke about that at great length.
Yeah.
When you were looking at one of the big names that were going to leave, one of the first teamers that was going to leave, Cham jumped out at us, going, I think he can go.
We could afford to leave him because due to the fact that we had what seemed like a plethora of midfield players at that time. Some of them haven't played well this season, it's got to be said. And then, of course, Turnbull comes in, and there's another one. So, yeah, I think Cham is someone who, as good as he can be from time to time, Kevin, he's not contributing enough, and I think he will leave, and that would be fine. Christie came on today, didn't make a big impact today. I don't think he's a certainty to start against Hearts, but let's have a look at what you think is going to happen, your lineup. Now, from Facebook, Hazard, Ayer, Duffy, Julien and Laxalt, McGregor and Sorrow, Christie, Turnbull, El Yunusi and Klamala up front. Listen, I don't think it's going to be that much different from that side, Kev. What about yourself?
Right. I'm going to put myself in Neil Lennon's head here. Scott Bain, Ayer, Duffy, Julien, Laxalt, McGregor, Brown, Christie, Turnbull and Eddie.
Wow. I would not drop Hazard after the last 2 games.
I
certainly wouldn't have dropped Sorrow.
I wouldn't either, but I've tried to put myself in Lenny's shoes there.
Oh dear. Well, listen, it was very interesting this morning before, obviously, kick-off this afternoon rather, where we seen the team lines coming in. And I was looking at that thinking, well done. it shouldn't be deemed a bold move, but it was pretty bold. He kept the 3 guys in, Sorrow and Turnbull and obviously Hazard, and they were right to stay in. I think they've actually added to their right to stay in the team after another good performance today. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But then what you're saying there, Kevin, is you're saying, well, your captain doesn't start. And I've already said, on current form, Edouard shouldn't start, but then he probably will. He probably will start. I don't think Frimpong played well today. Does that mean that Christie starts? Probably. I think Christie will. I think Edouard will. I'm not so sure about Brown. I've got to say, I'm not so sure about Brown.
I can't see us going into to win a quadruple treble against Hearts and Scott Brown not playing. Scott Brown not starting. I can't see that.
But is that just sentimentality, Kev?
It is, but I can't see it.
It's not in form. It's not in form.
I cannot. I wouldn't do it, but I cannot see our management team not doing it.
But then
and it'll get proved. If it happens, it'll get proved whether it's right or wrong. So, dinna at me. I would play Sorrow, but our manager will play Scott Brown in a Scottish Cup final.
Did you just say don't at me?
Aye, I went American there. Eh?
Yeah,
I went on. I should stop listening to the NFL podcasts.
Without a doubt. Joe Porter makes a brilliant suggestion. Celtic should double what you guys raise. That would be nice. We are trying to obviously organise, but just through this conversation, we've had another £55 coming in from Eddie Armstrong and Gabriella Welsh. So thank you very much for that. We're now sitting at 5155. I'm thinking that someone did. 2 companies pledged £10,000. Everybody knows what happened. And on the proviso that Peter Lawwell gave us an interview for the Weekender, he's not able to do that, but he has said that we can revisit that in the new year, Kevin. We'll hopefully have Peter Lawwell on the show in the new year, where Celtic will be as a club, who knows, and hopefully we'll still be in the league title race, and who knows who's going to be the manager, who knows who's going to be the CEO. If he announces that he's going to step down, he'll still be in his position at that stage, I would guess. But it would be nice if the club got on board with that and gave us some, but it's not going to happen, I don't think, Joe, because I think everything they generate goes to their own foundation, charity arm. Yes, I think that's the way it works. I'm pretty sure it does. And that's great. They do some brilliant work through the charity foundation as well. Ayer, man of the match, absolutely. No bad, Kev, for a converted midfield player, eh?
No bad for he done well. He's done well at right back a couple of times, eh? He has got his, like, he always looks like he's knackered, eh? Anytime that the camera goes on him, he's always got that like, it looks like he's struggling for breath, eh? He just gives it all, eh? He's a big unit to get up and down there, eh? And it probably shouldn't work, but it does at times.
Well, I think this one's for you, from Michael the Boy via Twitter. The fridge is slowly getting to grips with the game up here, Kevin. And that actually follows a mention from someone else who reckons that Neil Lennon's management of Duffy has been first class. He's taken him out of the limelight. He's slowly brought him back into the game. We might actually have a player in Duffy, Kev, which a couple of weeks ago I would have not expected that to be the case. I thought, listen, it's just not worked. Sometimes that happens in football. It just hasn't worked out. Do you think that we're going to keep him, first and foremost? Even if we do we still need another centre-half come January?
I think we will need another centre-half come January. Brighton have already said that we can't send him back. So I think he's here for the season. Will we need another centre-half in January? Yes, more than likely, because we probably also need a right back as well, because I think Ayer could be one of the players to leave.
You think so? Well, let's hope it's not, because I think that he is pivotal to Celtic's turnaround over the last couple of games. I'm not saying the whole season's turned around yet. A couple of other guys I want to talk about, Kevin, before we wrap this up. And the first one is Mikey Johnson. He comes back on. Brilliant to see him back. And hopefully he can make a few other appearances in the coming weeks for their game at Ibrox, because down the left we have kind of missed the creativity that Mikey Johnson brings to the side, haven't we?
We've got no wide players. We've got, apart from the fullbacks, we've got no natural attacking wide players. I think Frimpong again proved that he hasn't got that mentality in the final third. So getting Mikey back, he cut inside well and he fired the shot across the bar, but he saw his quickness of feet. Again, I don't know if the Colts or the development side have got a game this week to get him more minutes, but he's maybe played himself another decent week's training. He might play himself onto the bench for next week as well. So it was nice to see him back on the pitch. Pity about his moustache, but the more he says about that, the better. He
had a bit of the Chris McQueers going on, didn't he?
He did in the half, It looked like he still had his lockdown haircut as well, that his ma had cut. So, look, it's good to see him back. Look, I'm quite happy. We need to be positive, and we can't indulge in hyperbole. We need to be positive. We've had 2 good wins this week. We've got a cup final to look forward to next week, next Sunday, for what would be a quadruple treble. Then once we get that over, we can look to the future. But the future's looking okay, because we've seen guys like Hazard, Sorrow, Turnbull can actually come in and contribute. So there is a wee green shoots there for the future.
Oh, definitely.
But next week feels like a bookend or something. And I've been saying that since Aberdeen. That the cup final feels like it's holding everything up, which is quite strange for a cup final to feel like. But I think the cup final's holding us moving forward, holding us up moving forward. And once we get it all out the way, hopefully we'll be at this point next Sunday night raised a hell of a lot of money and celebrating winning the Scottish Cup, winning a quadruple treble. Then we can look to the future.
Well, a great point actually from Gordon Adams. Duffy is quality. Scottish football catches a lot of people out. It certainly did catch him out. He seemed off the pace, but he's maybe settled in now, which is brilliant. Hopefully that can continue into the Scottish Cup final next weekend, Kevin. Now, you mentioned our charity weekender, and I make absolutely no apologies for mentioning it again. We do have a link underneath the video. We're going to be going for 24 hours, 12 hours on a Saturday, 12 hours on a Sunday from 8 till 8. We've got some brilliant podcasts involved in this, Kevin. Everybody from the Four Tims and a Pod to the Cynic to Stevie Ray with the Celtic End podcast. We've got Celtic Underground, we have the Homeboys. There's a whole host of Celtic podcasts involved, and it's going to be a great weekend, and we're going to be obviously producing it from our studio in Dalkeith, but most people will be zooming in, so I'll be to blame if it doesn't go right, but we're hoping to raise as much cash as possible for 4 charities coming up to Christmas, so please get involved. And as I say, 24 hours, dip in and out. I'll be putting out a schedule during the week once everybody is firmed up their own times. Any podcast who are tuning into this, will be dropping you a wee email this evening, and we'll get everything sorted out for Saturday, 8 o'clock in the morning, Kev. So hopefully you can join us for the game at some point. We're going to be on. A Celtic State of Mind will be broadcasting for the game. And the rest of the content will be over to people like St. Rocks and various others. The Kano Foundation will be on for an hour as well. So loads happening. I'm just going to put out another wee well-wisher video later on this evening as well, Kevin. So brilliant that people are getting involved. Was it no great to hear from Craig Bellamy the other day? Haven't heard anything from Craig Bellamy for ages.
I always thought Craig Bellamy had unfinished business with us. I wished he would have came back for another year, and it was nice to. It was really more surprising to find out that he's working for Anderlecht.
Under 21s.
Under 21s at Anderlecht. That was really quite surprising. How did that end up? But obviously Vincent Kompany's the manager there, So that'll be something worth keeping an eye on. Craig Bellamy in Belgium. That's got a film about it,
Well, it was brilliant to hear from him, I've got to say. Absolutely superb, and we're looking forward to next weekend. But everyone who's been getting involved, thank you very much. The subscribers on YouTube are going up, and that's what we want to continue to happen. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, and once again, Kevin Graham, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State